Koto, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation with Cindy Forde, author of Bright New World, Building a Better Planet. Just before we kick off and while we're waiting for a few more people to join us, if you wouldn't mind just writing in the chat box where you're joining us from today or this evening, and one of your most special memories of being in nature, in the natural world. So if you just pop that into the chat box and we can all share that. And throughout the session, we invite you, we welcome you to pop your questions, your thoughts into the chat. We will be checking those and we'll make time at the end for questions and answers. So if you prefer to ask your question in person, you can unmute your mic at the end and ask Cindy yourself. So we'll just see those coming through. We've got Richard in Bangkok. Fantastic. Hey, I'm joining you from Waiheke Island, which is off the coast of Tamaki Makaurau, Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I would love to open with a Māori proverb, a whakatauki. It goes like this. Manaaki whenua, manaaki tangata, haere whakamua. And that means if we take care of the land and take care of the people, we will take care of the future. And that felt a fitting way to start in this conversation with Cindy. So I will introduce myself first and then introduce our amazing guest, Cindy Forde. So my name is Kelly Watkin. I'm part of the Planetari team, committed to this mission of creating and sharing Earth-led education. I have a background as a Steiner teacher, Steiner educator. I did that for over 10 years. I then moved into the field of positive youth development, running programs for rangatahi throughout Auckland. I now work with the mentors and the staff who work with the teenagers in these programs, and I develop and run courses throughout New Zealand in the field of well-being. I'm a trained mindfulness and meditation teacher, trained teacher of self-compassion and yoga, with a particular passion for sharing these with teenagers, with youth. And I'm absolutely delighted and honoured to be collaborating with Cindy on this mission. It's incredibly, incredibly important. Also delighted to be part of the Syntropic community with Christine. So thank you so much both for having me. Now introducing the amazing, beautiful Cindy. She is a thought leader and acclaimed author with over 25 years dedicated to systems change. In 2023, she won the Change Champion Award alongside leaders such as David Attenborough and Malala Yousafzai. Her groundbreaking children's book, which we're going to be talking about today, Bright New World, Building a Better Planet, it garnered critical acclaim, selected among the best new children's books by The Guardian, and hailed as outstanding by New Scientist. It has been adopted by the Australian National Curriculum, and we're going to be talking about that today too. She is the founder of Planetari, pioneering Earth-led education, earning a Climate Positive Award at UN COP28. Previously MD of Blue Marine Foundation and CEO of Cambridge Science Centre, she is guest faculty at University of Cambridge's Homerton Changemakers program. She serves on the steering committee of She Changes Climate and is currently writing a book on colonisation and climate change. So a real treat to have her with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Cindy.
Oh, thank you so much, Kelly. It's a real treat to be here, to be working with you and with Christine, and to be part of this incredible Syntropic community gathered here today. So real warm welcome to everybody, and thank you so much for being with us. It's lovely to see so many friends as well. Hi, Michelle. I'm so glad you came again. And Richard, of course, Solomon, Yoshimi, lovely to meet you. And thank you for joining us, Dorothy.
So let's start, Cindy. We can see behind you Bright New World, this wonderful children's book that you have written. Could you tell us a little bit about the book and why you wrote it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I wrote the book because, obviously, we're all here as part of Sydney Climate Action. We know we've got a lot of work to do if we're going to steer ourselves towards a brighter future. But there is a really positive story to tell. I mean, I think without a doubt, it's not going to be easy, but I think particularly in the education space for young people, for children, it's so important to lead with what we can do rather than everything that's gone wrong. So Bright New World sets out to do that. It takes us a little bit into each, but the book actually looks at the 12 biggest pressures on our system. So our transport system, our food system, our energy system, our education system, how we treat our carbon sinks, our rainforests, our oceans. But these things are all completely neutral. We're always going to need food. We're always going to need energy. We're always going to need transport. So instead of looking at these things as problems, it looks at how they can be transformed to be part of the solution. So that in each section, the book steps into the future to take away this fear. And it says, hey, look, we're in this fantastic ocean. Or the images behind Kelly and I are images from the book. So that's the kind of way that it looks. You step into this beautiful, bright new world for each theme, the rainforest, the ocean, the future of cities. And it's like, we made it. We're here now. And then we go, do you remember when we didn't, when we were doing these utterly absurd things that we knew were causing these problems? And we're almost kind of like laughing a little bit at the absurdity that we carried on doing it. And then we go back. So if it's the ocean section, we go back. So what were the problems that we were facing then? It was overheating, it was overfished, it was polluted with plastic, it had runoff, fertilizer runoff. And then it says, well, how did we get out of that then? So we look at how we applied all the solutions that do exist in our world today. I haven't made up a single, the stepping into the future bit is the only tiny bit of fantasy in the book. The solutions are utterly real, and they're based in things that are already happening now. And mostly they're quite evolved things. I go into artificial photosynthesis a little bit for the energy sector, but that is being developed, and it's even since I wrote the book, that's moved so rapidly to the point that it's under trial now in Cambridge. So that's my real motivation for writing the book, to show what we can do and to let children know, look, this is what we can do, and you can be part of it. Throughout the book, we have young activists all over the world talking about what they're actually doing now, so that children can be really inspired by seeing people who are very similar to themselves just getting on with it. So yeah, that's why I wrote it.
And it really is such a delightful, if you haven't read it, really encourage you to read it. It so skillfully approaches this huge topic, which can be quite anxiety inducing for young people, because this hope that Cindy talks about, it's just left me with just a delightful, hopeful feeling that we really can turn it around. So incredibly skillfully written. And I mentioned that it's recently been introduced to the Australian National Curriculum, which is a really exciting step, integrated into mainstream schools. And Cindy, you mentioned the other day to me that you'd had some lovely responses from children. What has some of the response been from this step?
Yeah, well, it's been absolutely great, because I feel, I'm not a teacher myself. I'm a storyteller. I've got, a very different background, but I work with a lot of teachers and educators, and they're just when I should have probably opened today's gathering with this. It's a privilege to be in the room with the most important people in the world. That's who I think teachers are. I mean, as you mentioned, my career, I've worked with business leaders, I've worked in, at senior level in government. But when I feel that I'm in the room with the most important people in the world, when I'm in a room with teachers, because they just carry that, they are the I think they do, the most important work. They form how our world is going to be. They're at the front line of shaping our future, and they do it with such dedication, such compassion, such care, that it's just always, to me, a privilege to work with them. And they work under such appalling conditions often, where they're pressured so much to perform to standards that are set. They have their own beautiful, I'm generalizing, but it is a generalization that I think it applies, idea of how to teach and what is beneficial. But there's so much that's dictated by, by government. So I have been part of a a year-long consultancy in the UK around, the pressures that teachers face, with teachers from all different types of schools. And most of them really think that this is an extremely important subject to be teaching, but they don't have a mandate to do so. So that's what's so apt, because then you've got to teach to test, teach to the SAT test, teach to the what's on the exams. And so that sets this value chain of what, what's worth it. And the teachers often feel very differently. So is absolutely brilliant about this book going on to Bright New World, going on to the curriculum and the national curriculum in Australia, and huge applause to Australia, is that it gives teachers that mandate to bring this into, they don't have to find extra time for it, jimmy it in here, squeeze it in there. They can just say, it's on the curriculum, we're doing this now. So that is just absolutely fantastic. And, since it started this week at the beginning of the Australian term, or was it last week? And every morning I wake up to an inbox full of messages from children saying, hey, this is just great. We're loving this. And it is just, because some of you will know, some of my work is much more is centered on some, really fixing extremely difficult problems that's going to take such a long time to extricate from us, looking at quite dark side of our collective story. But this is just pure joy when you've got children saying, no, we get this, we know how to do it. Can you, I ask really interesting questions. Again, often children have fantastic ideas themselves, and they feel able to to share these with me just in short emails. So I'm dying to know what's going on in the classrooms. It's just fantastic.
It's so lovely, Cindy, and it's so exciting for what is possible. This is just the first step in its integration. Could you speak to us a little more about why it's so critical to have this education system in line with the type of world that we want, not in line with the type of world that we have had?
Well, yeah, because I think we are evolving as a species, possibly a little bit more slowly than some of us would like, but we know that the methods that we've used, the education system was designed post-industrial revolution, and it's still very much rooted in that. And at that time, we thought, hey, this is wonderful. Whether there were certainly people who it wasn't wonderful for, but the overarching, the piece of society with the power thought that was absolutely fantastic. It's all about growth, 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 growth. We can have endless growth. We can pump out as much, though I don't, the science was there around the emissions, but it was conveniently ignored because it wasn't so, the consequences of that and overconsumption and this model of endless growth and almost manipulating people into being consumers. Just, the downside of that hadn't become fully apparent. It's fully apparent now. We have reports daily saying the trajectory that we're on for the temperatures in our, the global atmospheric temperatures, what's happening to our oceans. There's just no way that the way that we live now is compatible with our life support systems. So, but we still carry on educating children and young people to replicate this model. The success looks like coming out of school, getting a job in a big company that's part of this problem. I'm not saying that all companies will have the ability to adapt and change, but we're still teaching our children how to be part of replicating what we've always had when we know that it's failing us as a human family. So it's absolutely critical that we equip our children from the word go to be able to be the innovators and entrepreneurs of this brighter world. In every sector of society, the adaptations, the transformations are absolutely possible, but they won't be possible if you carry on with producing, educating children. I work in, I work with businesses, I can't tell you how many 30, 40, 50-year-olds in the business world who are just almost paralyzed when they realize what they've been taught is to do, and when they wake up to realize that there's a whole process of unlearning that they'll need to go through to redesign their organizations or to redesign how they choose to live their own lives. A lot of people will decide to do something completely different where they can have a more positive impact, and it's really heartbreaking to watch that, because it's around what you were taught and what you've been funneled into. And we just can't afford. It's horrible to see human beings in that position, and we can't afford to do it again. We have every opportunity to bring up children to be, to understand what we can do with all the glorious tools that we have at our disposal. We're in a much better position to understand how to live in balance with Earth than we ever have been. Our knowledge is that much greater that we can, with teaching children how to do this from the earliest days, instead of they land eco-literate, so there's no shock horror for children around, oh, you mean we've got to adapt? They know. They know that nature is our life support system. They're so ready to engage with it and to build that into whatever, whether they want to be hairdressers or astrophysicists, it will make sense to build that into whatever they choose to design or create.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cindy. And yeah, it just makes so much sense not to have to do all this unlearning, right?
Yeah.
There's there's so much that can be done through the education system. And obviously the book, it maps this out so beautifully. But if you wouldn't mind speaking to us just a little bit this evening about how can we support discussions and activities around climate change with children and with each other?
Well, I think your work is really critical, Kelly. Thanks so much for the introduction that you gave to yourself around. I will speak to the integration of that, but I think the most important frame for this is mindfulness and compassion. So I wonder if I could actually just turn the tables a little bit and just ask you to speak to that. To speak, to us about your work, about how we've integrated that into some of the pieces that we're working on with Planetari, but yeah, just generally expand on that incredibly important piece of how we learn.
Sure, Cindy, thank you. And yeah, like Cindy was saying, babies they're born connected to the natural system, right? And really, the climate crisis, it's ultimately and largely a climate crisis of disconnection. So, in order to find solutions to move forwards, we see reconnection as a really integral part of this. We can't move forward without reconnecting and remembering that we are part of the natural world. We are not separate. Mindfulness has been a really important part of my learning journey as a human being, and at Planetari we see it as foundational as well in this building a better planet. Mindfulness, it helps us to come home to ourselves, to our senses, to the present moment, to this present moment awareness. And from this place, we're learning to train where our attention goes, to see clearly, to see things as they are. And with this clear seeing, we are so much more able to respond skillfully and appropriately from a innate knowing of what is needed in each moment. Our mind, it's a really powerful force, and our mind influences us on a personal level, but there's also these collective stories. So yeah, working with the mind and mindfulness, super important part of climate change and climate action. And Cindy mentioned also compassion. Yeah, compassion is experiencing suffering, feeling suffering, and the will to want to do something about it. Yeah, and what I've noticed in my work with mindfulness and self-compassion is that the more we cultivate mindfulness and this present moment awareness, compassion is a natural byproduct, because we're more open to our experience. We're more open to how we feel, to the experiences and the feelings of others. And the planet is not separate to that. So the more we are open to that, the more we naturally, willfully want to engage in a solution to ease that suffering, to create positive change. So that's just a little bit about that. And with Planetari, we see weaving that in as a beautiful part of the journey. Thank you, Cindy, for.
Well, no, thank you so much, Kelly. I mean, I think that's absolutely foundational now to how we learn. It's not just what we know, it's it's our whole orientation, it's our whole mindset. So what we're trying to do is really shift from this egocentric worldview to an ecocentric worldview. I don't know, some of you may be familiar with the work of Kate Raworth on donut economics, which she works on designing an economic system that is earth-centric. Our current economic system, as Kate puts it, is the death of Earth is an economic externality, which is just so absurd. And I've borrowed this for her because I think she does it so well in her presentation. She holds up a picture of Ptolemy and the old way of where we saw the solar or our planetary system with Earth. There's Earth. It's a lovely old medieval drawing with Earth right at the center of all the other planets and the sun. And there's Copernicus, he's kind of hovering on the sidelines because he knows that it's a completely different, different orientation. But it's very dangerous. It was very dangerous in his time it's blasphemous to bring forward a different idea. So he bided his time to the point that he could actually say, actually, look, it's the solar system. Earth is a planet that revolves, it's connected into a much more integrated set of cosmic bodies. And we're at that moment as humans, I think, in terms of flipping our systems. We've had this incredible ignorance, really. And no matter how learned we think that we are, that we're at the center of the universe, or the center of planet Earth. And it is dangerous. There's been so many times, there's so many voices that have been trying to carry a message that have been, really brutally silenced, even to this day, when you try to bring these new ideas, which is why, I'm so grateful to the Australian national curriculum for putting this on, because, so many in Britain, you get so much pushback. No, we can't have that because the system doesn't work like that. But, we are at that moment in humanity that we flip our systems, and our education system needs to be ecocentric, and it's not an original idea. We're a 300,000-year-old species. For the first 97% of that, we knew that. We knew that, and that your life, if you look at most older civilizations, even up to 200 years ago, when America's colonized by European settlers, ditto Australia, people are working in balance with their that you need to be an anchor ecosystem species, because if your physical environment isn't thriving, you don't thrive. But we're coming to that realization now. But first it looked like we can just take more and more and more, but then you hit up against the planetary boundaries. So the education system is grounded, that we're developing now, is grounded in that, and so it doesn't, it's not a radical change, and the knowledge that we have is fantastic, but it's centering in how do we use that knowledge then, our science, our chemistry, our physics, our maths, our literacy, our art, to really inculcate in children that they are, part of this, they are stewards of this. Absolutely, it's a really exciting and thrilling role for children. I say to children, who else gets to learn how to fly a small planet, which is essentially what we're teaching them to do, to be the stewards of this glorious ecosystem. I think it's so that's why it's just so critical. And we have a fantastic body of knowledge as humans. It's just how we've applied it. So it's doing that flip from the Ptolemy, that we're the center, to the Copernicus, that we are part of this greater whole. Yeah.
Thanks, Cindy. And you've spoken to this really beautifully, just in the whole way that the book is framed, and this excitement that you speak of with being the stewards of a small planet. So bringing this excitement and hope for young people, for children. Climate anxiety, it's a big thing, and humans don't like to feel anxious. So often we push that aside, which leads to denial, which perpetuates the issues. Could you speak to us a little bit about climate anxiety and how to support the well-being of young people who are experiencing that?
Yeah, absolutely, Kelly. And I might call on you really, because you're more of an expert in these matters. But I have a friend called James Scurry. He's a journalist. He's a storyteller, but he's also a Buddhist psychotherapist. And he said, climate anxiety is actually the wrong word, because what we're dealing with here is climate empathy. So instead of sticking a label on children or any of us that to say, well, there's something wrong with us, we're anxious about this, because there's always a slight negative about, you're over anxious, this nervous wreck time. It's actually people who are feeling what is going, that there is, like you spoke to about compassion. We're all tuned into our natural systems, and we can feel there's something wrong, there's something that is ill, there's something isn't working. So it's a natural empathy. So I think that children need to be that needs to be recognized. There's nothing wrong with the child. It's a very real feeling. It's not, but sticking the label of anxiety makes it feel that there's something wrong with the child. They're overreacting, they're over anxious, they need to calm down. So what we need to do is acknowledge that we have this empathy for our planet, and really enable the children to understand that we are working to take the problems that are causing the anxiety, the anxiousness, these feelings, this empathy, this empathetic reaction away, and really allow them to understand, instead of dumping the information that things are going, if children receive the information that the world's getting too hot, or the whales' populations are collapsing, or the polar bears are dying, without any framework to say that this is why this is happening and what we're doing to solve it, is terrifying. But if that information comes, and I think that's what's so wrong with our media as well, because it just bombards us with the things without a space for human beings to come together to look, imagine if you had a news channel that said, okay, these are our problems, but look what's happening in Sydney today. Look what's happening in Uganda today. Look what's happening in New Zealand today. There's a human community that are working, coordinating, coming together to fix these problems, and there really are. That's the truth. And the joy of my job, people say to me, how can you work on sustain? It's too depressing, it's terrible, but it isn't. I get to work with, the most inspiring people on planet Earth. And I think giving children that sense, yes, we know, you've landed at a time when, where we've got this set of problems still, but we are working on, and we're working on it transgenerationally, because I also think that there's a real polarity in the story. There's like, old people really bad, have made a big mess, and it's up to you. You've got to fix it. You're the climate heroes. You're the climate warriors. You're not. You're children. You're young people who need guidance from elders, from the people that have come before. And there's so many of us that have spent our lives working on this. But some people were unaware. Even if you were unaware and you didn't know, people are changing and adapting and turning around. And I think young people need to know that if everybody's working on this, or there's a large body of the human family that are, and we're here to support you and to leave things in the best condition that we can for you, and to give you the tools to be part of making it even better when you're it's your turn to step into that space. So yeah, that's the framing that I put around climate anxiety. Kelly, what would you like to add to that? Because that is your absolute area of expertise, is working with the mental well-being side of education.
And I feel like you've covered that beautifully, Cindy, and just really honing in on that aspect of hope. Hope is such a powerful thing, and I feel like you bring that so beautifully through your work and through Brighten Your World. So this hopeful approach, connection, collaboration. In terms of what I would add to that from my realm of work, really things that I shared before, just around building that, nurturing that capacity in young people to be with what is. When we're talking about mindfulness, John Kabat-Zinn, he talks about you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. So equipping young people with this resilience, this quiet steadiness that they can, and trust that they can cope with whatever comes, because the future, it's uncertain. So I feel like that's really key, cultivating this ability to accept and hold and be with and navigate whatever comes. That would be the main point that I would add to that, Cindy. Yeah. This might be a nice time actually to talk. We've touched on Planetari in your introduction, and you spoke a little bit at the beginning, but would you be able to speak to us a little bit about Planetari and what that exists to do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so Planetary, so we have Bright New World, and I spoke about Planetary is really a kind of a system for Earth-led education and entertainment. And when I say the entertainment, because I think it is about telling a different cultural narrative. If you look at a lot of children's the stories that we tell in this world, whether it's film, television, books, there's a heck of a lot of incredible destruction and violence. That's they're beautifully packaged. The production values are fantastic, but the messaging is really quite destructive. And I think it's about replacing these kind of dreams of downfall with dreams of creativity and joy, and yeah, allowing our imagination to dream that we can be the best that we can be, rather than the most. I don't know how we got into this destroyer story, really, when we could have a creator story. So that's the entertainment piece. So Planetari, there's Bright New World on the more sort of education front, which is designed to be education, so it can be worked at home. But those 12 system areas, the energy systems, the transport systems, the food systems, one of the most important ones is how we think, our thinking system. So we pull those out almost into a curriculum. And so you have this is what we're working on at present. With thanks very much to you, Kelly. So those are the 12 curriculum areas, but you can cycle through them. They're such huge topics, and they're transdisciplinary. You can look at them, through maths, through science, through geography, through literacy, through art. But you can cycle through them in an age appropriate way. So each time you cycle through, you get a little bit more, knowledge of those, and how it applies to, exactly as I say, to this body of knowledge that we have. And then around that, all of that is wrapped in. So every lesson is held in mindfulness, because it's, as we've said, it's not just what you know, it's how you apply your knowledge. And then around that again comes, then we have, so that's all supported. We design ways to support teachers in the classroom to deliver that. There's extended pieces like special, we call them makerzines, on the rainforest and the ocean, so that you can really get the sense that we're held by this fantastic life support system. So there's some extension around really understanding how those work. But these are adventures. They're presented as adventures. Let's explore our oceans. Let's explore our rainforests and really get to grips with what they do for us. And then around that is this content that is all based in creativity. Novel that currently I'm working on a couple of children's novels and these adventures in verse, which are just ideally, as we get more established, more funding, able to move further, these will be animated. We have a little YouTube channel where the children go and they interview other people that are doing things, so they really feel that they're part of things. But just really creating an extended media system that has this messaging of there's the as I say, the more pedagogical hows, but then there's there's a whole ecosystem wrapped around it of food for our imagination, so that we dream as creators rather than as destroyers, really.
Thanks, Cindy. And it's story, and a story is such a powerful language, isn't it? Particularly for young people. And yeah, just such a gift that Cindy has for writing. Could you, before we move on to questions and answers, Cindy, would you be able to tell us a little bit about your other projects that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a broad spectrum, because I have been in this space for a very long time, since I was pretty young myself. I kind of started out as a change maker, as a teenage activist on environment and civil rights and human rights issues. But so I've had quite a long journey, and I maintain my connections with the places that I've moved through. I'm an ambassador for the Blue Marine Foundation, which is dedicated to the conservation of oceans. As you mentioned in the introduction, I'm on the steering committee of She Changes Climate, which is around making sure that women's voices, I mean, I don't know if any of you have seen those dreadful, they call them the family photo at each COP. And there's like normally somewhere between 190 to 193, 194 world leaders. And it's the horrible, grim game is spot the woman. Here we are in 2023, you can normally count somewhere between 3 and 7. So even with franchise women who get a seat at the UN table, there's a real lack of, and this is really important because it's about representing a feminine worldview. It's not just about the woman, because there's women who really are part of this old order, and often the women that get into power. I won't name any names. There's some fantastic exceptions, but they really hold. They're in there because they still represent an old order. So I think it's perfectly possible for men to have a feminine worldview, and you could use another term, yin or yang. But we're so out of balance because we've gone so far on this dominator energy, dominate, extract, destroy, control. That there's nothing that has the balance of that: create, regenerate, cooperate. That compete versus cooperation. So enabling women's voices to be much more fully integrated into our, the decisions that we make for our collective future are huge. So it's not just a seat at the table at the UN. It's women in all, women from the global south, women from all types of different communities, the indigenous people who have a very different worldview, allowing that to be an integral part of how we redesign what happens to us next on planet Earth. I also, as you say, I work at the Cambridge University on the change. I'm the guest faculty on their Change Maker program, which is really thrilling because that's young, really fantastic young people who are coming up. How do they step into this space and understand what they have, the tools, the power they need to go into that ecosystem and make change? Because there's some people talk about, you use the phrase, Christine, the other day, Darth Vader MBAs. We're training our young people to come out with these MBAs, which are hugely respected qualifications, but they're still very much, as I spoke to earlier, about going and perpetrating the old model. So working with young people who can go out there, I suppose that's Jedi MBAs is the other, to really change to change the world order. And then there's my work at the intersection of climate change, colonization and climate change. That's the book that I'm writing and the workshops that we're designing. And that's really about, if we have a much better understanding of our past, our shared past as a human family, then we can make much better decisions about how we move forward. But so much part of our past has been violent, ugly, grim, shameful. So it's been shoved down and denied, and these myths woven to change. Horror, the conquistadors. Let's look at the conquest of South America. They called themselves the conquistadors. This is a name of glory and of heroic achievement, when you're actually masking some of the biggest genocides that happened on planet Earth. And that's not just them, that's the pattern that goes on and on. And if we can't, then you know what I'm going to say, Christine, the Ben Okri quote, we can only make a future from the depth of the truth that we face today. So that's not about guilt and blame. It's about, come on, let's see how we got here really honestly. And then we can we can recognize the patterns that have caused that and choose a different path forward. So yeah, that's some of the things that I work on.
And just so important, that work you're doing with bringing that into the light and sharing it. And carving a way forward. It's essential that we know the truth. It's inspiring, really, that one human can be part of so much change making. And Cindy, just before we move on, last question before we go to question and answer. Where to from here? What's the vision? We can speak to that in terms of Bright New World. It's just come onto the curriculum in Australia. What's the vision for that, and more broadly, if you wish, as well?
Yeah, well, more for Planetari, for Bright New World, that really is, I have to advocate, to work really hard to find the allies, to try to move this so that we can get it much more broadly integrated. It doesn't have to be my work. I'm part of a network of fantastic educators who are dedicated to shifting our education system, but really moving that so that this generation in the now are equipped to know for what is coming and to make that as positive as possible. The other thing I feel, it's so delightful to be here. I am in Cambridge, with you in New Zealand, with you people in Sydney. It's fantastic, and I think that is the vision, is this human coordination project, that we find each other and that we join up, because I totally believe that the majority of us really want a different type of world, of governance system for our planet, but we're stuck with these global leaders who are either dinosaurs in their own way of thinking or totally, it's about power and greed. And you've got the fossil fuel lobby who have so much money they can buy almost any government on earth. And that really is, the COPs. There's more fossil fuel delegates there than there are representative of countries. The same thing just happened with the global conference on plastics. But we do have, so sometimes I think it's immovable how we get, but we do have power. Each one of us, you've said such lovely things about me as a change maker, but I know everybody in this room is a change maker. And individually we can feel really despondent and weak. But when we find ways of coming together like this, and through Christine, your incredible work of building these syntropic communities, then we have this collected power that can move us as a human family forward from the ground up. And hopefully the pressure from us and the leadership, the obviousness that this model isn't working. We're there, we're then ready, we've built our new models, and there's something in place instead of this feeling that we're falling into an abyss. So being part of communities like this and connecting us together, I think, is a big part of what is now, and what I'm hoping will be stronger as we move forward. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cindy. And I'd love to open the floor to anyone who has questions for Cindy. If there's any, or if you wish to share your own insights, your own experience, you're very welcome to. So feel free to unmute yourself and jump in.
Hello, I'm Dorothy, and my business is Endless Play Studio, and it's very much everything you've been talking about, Cindy. I mean, I say amen to all of that, but my work is in early childhood in Australia. So my question was actually, how did you get the book into the Australian curriculum? But I see Christine's already answered and said we don't know, but I'm really curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think it came out through the publishing company, actually. They have the educational arm, Welbeck, who just been bought out by Hachette. So I think it really is a bit of a mystery. Somebody in the Australian national group picked it up and said this needs to go on the national curriculum. But I've been really trying to find out how, because I'd like to replicate it in in other curriculums, and also it depends on how each country works differently. But yeah, I really can't say much more than that, Dorothy. It's a bit of this. It's a fantastic piece of serendipity. I mean, I've worked really hard as an advocate, and I mentioned my work in the UK. Really lobbying government to get this onto the curriculum, and then ping, it turns up on the Australian national curriculum. So yeah, it's just really odd. I'm delighted, but I'm not terribly clear on how it happened.
Well, we're super excited in Australia and super grateful. I mean, I've got, my children are going through it. I've got one in year 1. So I can't wait to see the book appear. I can't wait to see the book in general and see how we could use it in early childhood. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dorothy, and thank you for so much for doing that work, which is just fantastic that you're doing it from the absolute earliest years. That just sounds so really wonderful and heart-cheering.
Yeah, super important. And that's really the vision, isn't it? That it infiltrates throughout right from the beginning to the end of the schooling journey.
Just on that. Oh, sorry, Michelle. I was just one more thing, Dorothy. There's a fantastic team of university students who are going to come on the project for a month in next month actually, and one of their jobs is to find out how that got onto the curriculum and how that can be replicated with other national curriculums. Yeah, so maybe I'll have an answer for you in July.
Yes, I really hope it can be replicated. I mean, this is such important work. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Michelle.
No worries. So it's so lovely to have you here. I really admire what you're doing, and you're very brave. You tackle great, big, intractable issues, and it's just great. I just wanted to ask you a question and take advantage of you being here. It's a different subject, but 100 years ago there were 2 billion people on Earth, and now there are 8 billion, and there are people saying that we'll get to 10 billion by 2050. I don't think we can sit back and watch that happen. I think we need a population policy, and I'm just wondering about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's very interesting. A lot of the indigenous populations controlled their population in line with the resources that were available for them. You know, we've gone ahead and designed an economic system that is based on having more and more and more and more people, so that we can have more and more and more consumers. So it's absolute. You know, it's totally unsustainable. One of the other organisations I'm associated with, and I was very lucky to win that award, the award that Kelly mentioned with David Attenborough, because he's the patron of Population Matters, and so this is a global organisation, so which is dedicated to, you know, looking at this problem, and it gets all kinds of, you know, you can't tell people how many children what they can have, and it's all about, you know, white Westerners trying to control brown women's bodies, but you know, it's not that at all. That's some of the pushback that it gets. What it is the more you it's totally based in educating women and girls, which is a topic that the section of the book actually, because that's one of the biggest impacts that as David Attenborough did say, the more people we have, the harder our problems get to solve, and ultimately, you know, they become unsolvable. So we do need to get our population into balance, and educating girls is one of the most effective ways of doing that. The more educated women and girls are, the fewer children they choose to have. And there's the studies show, there's a UN study, if everybody had half a child less, there's no such thing as half a child, but obviously averaged out, then the population starts to drop, Michelle. So by the time I don't have the absolute, I think it's by 2050, you know, we start to dip under instead of reaching 10 billion. If that happened now, we wouldn't get to the 10 billion. It would start to get back and steady out around, you know, 7-8 billion, which is the result. There are the resources on the planet to feed us and to have abundance, not abundant, but no, enough for that population. You know, I'd say it still puts a heck of a lot of stress on the land. It's still very high. But if we did that, if we design our economic systems, our education systems, particularly the economic, that so that people understand that we need to have that indigenous knowledge that we have, that we need to have a population that corresponds to the resources at our disposal, and look at that as a planetary, as a human family on a planet. The economic systems reflect that, and we have this education for girls so that we understand, so that you've got these women who are able to take control of their lives and make choices. Then we can do something about what is a critical issue. If you have runaway human population, then yeah, as David Attenborough said, the problems do become unsolvable. So population is a critical issue, and a way to handle it sensitively that doesn't get into religion or doesn't get into these, you know, these dominator models that I spoke about at the beginning of that answer. Yeah.
There's an Australian writer, Julian Cribb, who suggests our sustainable population would be about 2.5 billion, looking into the future, the distant future. Yeah. So I've heard the argument about the education of girls, and for so many reasons, education is so important. I actually think we have to have a program of sterilisation, voluntary sterilisation, massive program. It's such a big problem.
I mean, sadly, there are there are, Christine's looking for this. I mean, there are a lot of younger people who are choosing not to have any children. And I think that's a rather sad consequence of this. But it is, you know, perhaps it does require a more drastic solution, Michelle. But then I don't feel I'm able to wade through all the ethics of that. But you know, it's certainly something that we collectively need to look. I mean, you're right. The population's doubled since the 1970s. You know, which is a very short period of time. So it is critical, and it needs a critical solution, and it needs the human family to come together and try to decide what that is. So yeah, and it's an incendiary issue as well, as you will know, Michelle. So it would take a lot of compassion and holding very gently very skillfully to get a way forward on that. What are you saying, Christine, in your chat? I'm
Thanks
trying
for
to
that,
find
Christine.
show the population is peaking in the next 10 years, then declining. So hopefully there will be some
Yeah.
natural.
So
decline.
Hannah, let me just get the reference. Hannah Ritchie, Not the End of the World, How We Can Be the First Generation to Build a Sustainable Planet. She is a data analyst in regeneration and so on. And so her book references the population thing, and from a very, very she spends all her life in data analysts and in these particular areas, and so highly referenced that the population is about to peak and we will be in decline. This is happening naturally. And then if you also have a look at the work of Bucky Fuller, my mentor, and also Yoshimi is, that's how we connected. There are some key things that if you provide adequate, affordable energy, electricity, then the population growth goes down. So a lot of these things, Michelle, are deeply interlinked. In other words, if you take care of people and provide them with energy and food and dignity, they actually have less children. That's very statistical. So I don't think we need to do any form of eugenics. I actually think that we need to treat humanity decently, and as a result of treating all of humanity decently, we will find that there will be less babies, and that then creates its own set of issues, which is what is happening in Japan. I think Yoshimi cannot probably speak of that as well. You know, an aging population, no youth, and same in China, but I'm for that problem. Personally, but yeah, I don't think that the population growth is actually the serious issue that we think it is, and we're experiencing right now, because it's going to change.
Just before we go to Michelle, thank you, Christine. I just noticed your comment in the chat, Dorothy, which is brilliant, you know, about this panic. We're not going to have enough people to buy stuff. So, you know, that's, you know, another evidence of why we need to shift our worldview and shift our models. But yeah, very, very good comment. Michelle. Yeah. Michelle, you've had your hand up for quite some time.
No
sorry.
worries.
Oh, no, it's Michelle, because there's two Michelles. There's Michelle Smith and Michelle Arellano. I'm sorry if I
Yes.
pronounce. Yeah. Hi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been brilliant. Like I am really trying to instigate, at least in my kids' primary school, to have this sustainability type of at least thinking within the curriculum, and this is very important. But I think there is also like, and it goes intertwined with what you were saying about treating people like people. It's about your political rights, and I think that educating women is not enough. Empowering, and I'm using like air quotes here, empowering women as the word it is now, is not enough. I think that there needs to be like essentially a structural change of how society is a structure. There's loads of misogynistic pressures and thinking and the way the world is working or is designed that basically doesn't enable people. Like, you can have very well educated people and very let's say empowered women, but without these structural changes, then things won't happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Michelle. And it's kind of terrifying times because in some ways we're losing ground. If you look at what's just happened, recently in America with the Roe versus Wade law, which is just unraveling women's rights in America. You look at what's happened in Afghanistan, and the world has kind of stood by, like, it's not our problem. But so you're absolutely, all I can say is you're absolutely right. And Christine's put a fantastic point in the track. Structural change is the work of Syntropic World. I think it does, that does feed into the kind of change, the systemic change that we're all trying to work towards. And yeah, that just, as you say, it does take real work to bring that in. And as I mentioned, that feminine worldview that comes when you're allowing women to show up in a much more authentic way in the decision making of our world, as opposed to just representatives of an old order in a female representation. So again, a critical point. Thanks very much for making it.
I'm just aware that we're coming up to time.
Yeah, we're coming up to time, but your hand's up, and I'd love to hear from you.
Me? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is fantastic. 'Cause I was a school teacher 50 years ago. I'm just so thrilled that the book is in the curriculum in Australia, and we need to work on that, Kelly, for Aotearoa. But my concern is the seed sown, but is the soil fertile enough for the acceptance of it? And I think the reason I'm here is because of Christine's incredible understanding of Buckminster Fuller. And she's the closest thing to living Bucky that I've ever met. And this is the first time we're actually meeting.
Oh, wow.
So the thing is, how do we can get the books, in our curriculum, but it's our responsibility, I think, and now it's a time for the younger ones of you to say, how do we fertilize the soil so that people listen, that people understand the urgency right now? And it's a big challenge, but to be in communities like this gives me hope, because it's getting pretty tough out there. So Kelly, we need to hook up, because I can see you right now. I'm in Howick, so I look across to Waiheke. So let's get together. So thank you, Christine and Cindy and Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoshimi. That is the work, isn't it? Making the soil fertile for all the ideas that we bring and the tools that we bring, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's been absolutely lovely having everybody join today. A lot of really beautiful, inspiring small group. We had planned to close. I was going to read you one of my poems for children called "If We Ran the Planet." I don't know if we've got time for that. If anybody wants to stay for it, I will read it. It's fun. It's a little bit long. It probably takes about 3 minutes to read, but it's so. But before I do that, just to say, anybody who needs to drop off, a huge thank you. We are the bright new world. It is possible because of people, everybody in this room. And, that is for me, that brings me the hope and the joy of my work. So thank you so much for being part of this, of this movement, really, which is what we are. Yeah. So here we go. If we ran the planet, this is from a, children's eye point of view. If we ran, and this is from Dr. Seuss, it's of Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss had this problem in America that there was, the literacy rates were really, kids weren't reading. So he used these wacky verse forms to get kids to read. So the problem now is eco-literacy. So I'm experimenting with these wacky verse forms to get us all eco-literate. If we ran the planet, said Janet to Amit, we'd make a few changes. Well, that's what began it. Children from here, from there, everywhere began to discuss how they'd care, share and dare, care about Earth and learn how it's connected to all of our lives so it's better protected. Share with each other, because thinking together is how to make sure we're all much more clever. Dare to imagine, to plan, get it done. A bright world that works for, hey, everyone. First, AJ stood up with her flaming red hair and tossed it, with her hair flaming red and tossed it behind her. And here's what she said. If we ran the planet, there just wouldn't be too much heat in the air, too few fish in the sea. We'd soon fix that up. We know just the way. Get those old dinosaurs out of the way. We'd look them square in the eye without blinking and tell them the world needs a new way of thinking. Whoever heard of burning up fuels that we know makes the planet too hot? Oh, what fools! The thing that brings us almost to tears is they know what it does, but keep doing it for years. We'd harness the sun and the wind and the waves, and we'd do this because we know that it saves the rainforests, oceans, the North and South Pole. When you can have solar, why bother with coal? We'd tell those old dinos, you're getting the sack, you've made a big mess, no one wants you back. Your retirement starts now, it's time you began it. And then we'd get on with running this planet. Then Tantan stepped forward and he had a dream to make sure all our transport was clean. Who needs all that nasty pollution and gases? Our mamas and papas have acted like asses, putting oil in their cars and filling the air with stuff we all know just shouldn't be there. Here's what we'll do to make things less hectic. We'll design all our vehicles to run by electric, or we'll make liquid fuel straight from sunlight like trees and plants do. They got it just right. We'll ship ships with a mixture of biofuels and sails, which would make us all much better friends with the whales. Who needs a car each when we can easily share? Call one up when you need it, then go anywhere. And these might be Sunsheens. That's a car that can run by charging itself while it's parked in the sun. We'd have trans-global electric buses and trains that run on time, all the time, so no one complains. We'll fly in a sky where the air's cool and blue. Our planes will be hybrid, so emissions are few. And we won't fly so much, as the smart thing will be to slow travel on airships and sail on the sea, or go by bike. Maybe one that glides like a hawk, and heaven knows, people, we might even walk. Going to places where the reason we came is to make sure that Earth is blooming again. Well, everyone clapped when Tantan said that, and up in the air, Blessing tossed her pink hat. It was Femi who caught it. He was her twin. The next thing we'll do, they said, sharing a grin, is we'll make good food, which means making food good. Whatever we eat should do good, and it could. If we think of the Earth as a great big huge pie, humans have eaten up almost all, and that's why the rainforests and so many animals die. But here's how we can change it back if we try. If we all ate a little less meat, well, that means we don't chop down the forest to grow soya beans to feed the billions of animals we eat. Eating less meat gets the world on its feet. The trees would grow back and they'd be able to suck out the planet-heating gas, CO2. 10,000 years ago, 90% of animals were wild. Do you know where they went? We ate them all up, or we took all their land. Just 1% bravely now make a last stand. All other animals in our world now are sheep, pig, lamb, goat, chicken or cow, or the ones that we eat. Poor lions and leopards, we've pushed them all out when we could be their shepherds. We know if we carry on guzzling like gannets, we'll gobble up everything left on this planet. But if we change what we put on our plate, forest, fields and wildlife can regenerate. That's great, shouted Lala, Malala and Kate. And another thing that we're going to do in this world is make sure there's schools for all of our girls. When girls go to school, they follow their dreams, and having just a few less children, which means there's more world to share for all of Earth's creatures. That's why we'd like this as one of our features. And we'll clean up the oceans, yelled Woon Chen and Vish, and make sure that people sustainably fish, which means making sure that we don't catch too many. If fish can't have babies, there soon won't be any. We need healthy oceans, added Abdul. They do a big job of keeping Earth cool. We'll stop people making throwaway stuff. There's too much already. Enough is enough. We'll design everything, beamed Kim and Carmichael. To use over again, all life goes in cycles. And the cities we'll build, beamed Mohan Bhatt. They'll power themselves, be incredibly smart, with glass that cools buildings or keeps them warm, and sponge pavements that soak up the rain in a storm, with sky gardens, vertical farms and green streets. Going home by solar-powered drone will be neat. Little Yuki stood next. And though ever so small, she had the most wonderful idea of them all. Let children decide. Make us part of the plan of how we can be the best that we can. We know how we'd like our world to be. We're not afraid to think differently. And so they went on, far into that night, working out how to set everything right. And their ideas were so amazingly bright, they created an astonishingly powerful light that shone into the heart of every resident on planet Earth. Even the most backward old president and dreary prime minister lit up inside and realized the time had come to decide to build a world with a future. So Amit and Janet would grow up to run the most beautiful planet.
Oh, Cindy, thank you so much. What a gift you have. I couldn't help notice the beautiful smiles all around the virtual room. Please keep writing. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's such a joy.
It's
Yeah,
fun,
thank
but
you,
I
Cindy.
hope the children will like it. It's so lovely to meet you all. I hope we all stay connected. If anybody has any follow-up questions, I think you're in touch with Christine by email. So do let's keep in touch and build this bright new syntropic world. Thank you so much, everybody.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
I have to go because I got to catch a plane.
Yeah, you got to go. Yeah.
That was
Okay.
fantastic. I can go and you two can stay. Because you're a co-host, so you can stay and debrief. But that was absolutely brilliant, Cindy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, no, that was brilliant because of you three, actually. The three of us, I think, made it brilliant. That's all. It was really good. Yeah.
You're so humble for your own good, Cindy.
Okay. All right. I am going to go. And,
I will catch you later. We'll catch you later.
Catch one of those toxic planes.
I'll catch you tomorrow morning. I'll see you again tomorrow evening.
Yeah, I know. The last one. We're nearly there. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I'll just stay on to say thank you, but that you couldn't have done a more beautiful job. That was just so lovely.
Oh,
Yeah,
good. I'm so glad. It's new
fabulous.
to me, so I hope it felt okay.
It was really fabulous, Chris. Kelly, I have to go as well because I've got to go on another call around.
No, that's totally fine, Cindy. You're just
fantastic slide. I mean, don't we look just great?
same uniform.
That's right. But it was really lovely. Thank you so much, Kelly. You're just such a yeah.
Thank you for having me, Cindy. So honored to be part of it. So thank you. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Get it to go. Yeah.
Good luck with all that. Not luck. Go well with all the business.
Yeah, thank you. And you too, Kelly, and let's have a catch up next week once we've got this sitting climate out.
That would be great. This is really reignited, actually. I sort of want to dive back in and see what we can create.
So do I. It's just an absolute no-brainer, but I've just got to find somebody who's got power to help us make it happen. It's a no-brainer, and
it is, isn't it?
Needed here to do it. The only thing we need is access to capital. We need reach into the schools and the money to produce this stuff. That's why I just get so frustrated because it's not that hard.
Yeah, you're right. It's so obvious actually what needs done, isn't it? Let's regroup because it's kind of reignited the mission, and let's find a way. We'll find a way.
Yeah, thank you so much. You take care. Look after yourself. Yeah.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.